Hello, this is Bob Cooke here from the internet YouTube channel TA Therapy. I'm going to give a presentation on Margaret Mahler. Margaret Mahler is that picture in front of you, and she is a woman who became quite famous in her own right and pivotal in the psychoanalytic movement. She was especially important in the development of child models today in how the child actually psychologically develops. She was born in 1897 and she was a psychiatrist and later a psychoanalyst and died in 1985. So she had a good long life, but she was very important for her ideas on separation and individuation. That's how the child actually starts to individuate from the mother and become an individual in their own right. She did lots of studies on detachment and attachment as well, but that probably is the most important work on the separation individuation phase of child development. So let's look at her plan or her model of child development, which became so well known. Let's start with her first phase, which is the normal autistic phase, which lasted to 3 or 4 weeks, the first early weeks in life. And she would argue there that was little differentiation between the mother and the child as they're fused and merged. This phase was challenged by later writers. In fact, Mahler backed down on some of her statements here, and Daniel Stern, who was writing later in 1980 and published a book on this in 1986 called The Interpersonal World of the Infant, talked about children or infants being born from birth with a sense of self. Anyway, let's go on to the next phase she talked about, which is now going later to 5 months. She's talking here about the normal symbiotic phase as she talked about it. This lasts until about 5 months of age. The child is now aware of his mother, but there's still not a sense of he or her being individual. The infant and mother are still one, and there's a barrier between them and the rest of the world. Okay, so now let's look at the whole phase of separation, individuation proper. In other words, the march for the infant to start psychologically individuating and become an individual. Often in this stage there might well be separation anxiety issues where the infant starts to get anxious about the move away from the mother. Anyway, it's a healthy phase that we all need to go through. Often when there's problems in this area, then some of the disorders and some of the insecurities are played out in later life. So she talks about the arrival of this phase, that's the separation individuation phase, marking the end of the normal symbiotic phase. So they're starting to separate, and this refers to the development of limits, the differentiation between the infant and the mother, where individuation refers to the development of the infant's ego, sense of identity, being themselves, and cognitive abilities. Mahler explains how a child at the age of a few months breaks out of this, what she called the autistic shell, into the world of human connections. This process just doesn't happen, and I think that's really important to sort of remember here, that this is a process which she talks about goes on to about 36 months. I mean, these times are, remember, a bit flexible. It doesn't quite work like from one phase to the other phase to the other phase to the other phase in sort of time strict motions. There's a whole flexibility here. So she talks about different stages in this whole development. So the first stage is where the child is becoming more individual, and there's more differentiation, and they're becoming more aware, if you like, of the mother. Then they start practicing the individuation, if you like. Another word for this she often talked about was hatching, starting to take a step, if you like, into the world of connectedness with the adults and the other caretakers except for the mother. We now move on to the third stage, which is rapprochement, which means really a leap of faith into the world of connectedness with the external others. But if you watch young children, you'll see that as they start to move out and start to really explore the world, they've always usually got some transitional object which reminds them of their mother, which they can step back to develop some internal security. It's through the rapprochement stage, however, that the infant once again becomes close to the mother. They still go backwards and forwards, but the toddler may become tentative, wanting his mother to be in sight at this stage through eye contact and action. So, as I said, he can explore the world. Okay, sometimes this can lead to, this phase can lead to anxiousness and separation, anxiousness and fear of abandonment. And a basic mood predisposition might be established at this point. So if this whole process isn't dealt with healthily in some ways, then there's going to be some problems through, as I said, into later life. And the fourth stage is, of course, object constancy. Now, object constancy is when they've taken in a constant object. In other words, they've got an internalized mother figure or father figure that they can take with them as they start connecting with the external world. So they've got a sense of internal security. That's really important. I mean, I might not get full object constancy, which is the aim, but you're going to have some, I hope, healthy objects there to provide an internalized, secure other. Okay, this full object constancy is reached about 30 to 6 months, and is the fourth subphase in the whole separation and individuation proper phase that we're talking about. And it's very important in looking at how the secure base of the infant is developed. Once that object constancy is actually really securely in place, then of course other developmental stages start to become the norm, and they can go through those stages with a healthy internal object constancy and a sense of an internalized security, which they can take with them to perform the developmental tasks which are needed to psychologically grow up. Okay, so if there's some deficits in this whole process, as I said, there can be some difficulties later on in the adult functioning. Some of the developmental tasks might not be reached. There could be anxiety, separation anxiety, fear of morbid abandonment, or even a detachment or withdrawal system away from the self. So this is an important model to think about and gives you some ideas of the tasks, if you like, that the infant needs to go through when developing, in inverted commas, a psychological adult or very young adult, which we might call object constancy, so they can take some security in the development of the self on towards the march of adulthood. Okay, if you want to know more about Margaret Mahler's work, just put her name into Google and you'll see lots of references to her in the area of separation, individuation and child development. Okay, hope you found this useful. If you want to actually get in touch more about this, just email me at the Institute, which is bob@mcpt.co.uk, or or in fact you can even ring the Institute if you wanted to, but it'd be better if you emailed me. Okay, thank you for listening, and I hope you found it useful. Bye-bye.